You don't want to miss this one. We're going to dig into the dirty little secrets of the RRSP. What don't they tell you? Let's dig in. If you're watching on YouTube and this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. Some of the episodes we've already put out could provide the information you've been looking for, so don't forget to check our back catalog. Lastly, if you're interested in learning more about Control and Compound, our business, and what we do, leave us a comment below and we'll be in touch. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I'm Darren Mitchell, and joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, how you doing today?
Hi, Darren. I'm excited. I'm excited to do this podcast and probably get angry about RRSPs. So it's gonna be a great. It's gonna be a great day. It's gonna be a great day.
I love it. Yeah, we talk about this a lot with clients, so we thought we'd just share some insights about what's out there about RSPs and what's not out. What's not commonly known. So pretty excited about it.
Before we get started, though, I want to remind everybody, if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you subscribe and leave that 5-star review. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you always know when new content's coming out. And don't forget to follow us on our social media at Control and Compound on Instagram and TikTok.
All right. So, one of the questions I like asking people is, do you want to follow the strategies of the 90% of the people who control 10% of the wealth? Or do you want to follow the strategies of the 10% of the people that control 90% of the wealth? And it's pretty simple for me. I want to do what the wealthy do. And that's what I've spent the last 15 years of my career studying, what the wealthy do. So let's talk about RSPs, Christina, and how that fits in.
So, hot topic right now as this podcast is being released, it's RRSP season. The deadline is coming. Get your money in today. The banks have the signs up on the sides of the street. Everywhere you look, you better get that RRSP contribution in. That drives me crazy because what that means is you did absolutely zero planning. You waited until the end of the year and now you've decided you need to make it blows my mind that is a form of planning because it's not planning, right? So the RRSP deadline craze is absolutely absurd. If you were doing RRSP deposits, it should have been incorporated in your planning a long time ago and you knew what you were going to do, right? So this deadline stuff, not loving it, but that's what we're hearing about. Recently, we just did a podcast on the characteristics of an ideal investment. And we decided that we were going to do a series following that on looking at different investments, investment vehicles, and comparing that list, those ideal characteristics to what is offered in those investments. So I thought with the RRSP craze happening that we should, we want to talk about the dirty little secrets. We're going to go into all that. But at the end of this, I do want to pull that list back up and I want to go through it one to one and see exactly how the RRSP lines up.
Yeah. And, you can probably tell thus far into the podcast, we're not huge fans of RRSPs, but I want to clarify, RRSPs aren't evil. It doesn't make you a bad person if you have RRSPs. I have RRSPs. I haven't contributed for years once I learned what I know now. But RRSPs are fine for some people. They're forced savings. They put, if your employer's putting money in on your behalf and like matching it, great, take advantage of that. For some people, this is the way to go. For the people that we typically deal with, the higher income earners, the business owners, especially the business owners and the real estate investors, I don't think it's a perfect thing. I don't think it's even a good thing, but it's the most talked about financial product in the country, right? Like the banks tell us we should have it. The government tells us we should have it. So that scares me right off the bat. Our parents or our grandparents tell us we should save in RRSPs. So you would think people would be so educated on RRSPs that they would know the rules and how it works inside and out. And what we find when we talk to clients or prospects, it's the exact opposite. It's just people are just following the herd without actually investigating what's really going on behind the scenes or what really happens with an RRSP at this point, and this point. So we're going to dig in there today and we're going to do a little quiz. So, I think Christine and I kind of know these answers, but we're gonna set it up as a quiz to talk about the most common used financial tool in RRSP. So question number 1 on the quiz, Christina, is an RRSP tax deductible?
Great question, Darren. Is it tax deductible? And I think just kind of spinning off what you just said, I said I was angry about RSPs because of the misconceptions. And this is probably misconception number 1. Is an RRSP tax deductible? It is not. it's not tax deductible, it is tax deferred. Right? There is a really large difference between the two. Tax deductible, that's gone forever. That's been deducted and you're not ever going to have to pay it back. Tax deferred means, yeah, you're not going to pay that tax this year, but we're kicking that tax down the line and we're going to pay for it in future years, right? So it's not, that tax is not gone. We're just waiting to pay it at a different year, when in my mind, we don't know what the tax rate's going to be. We don't know where, what the government's going to set that tax rate to be. We don't know what tax rate we're going to be in. So we're setting ourselves up for unknowns. All right, Darren. So that's the first question. Second question on our quiz. Do RRSPs grow tax-free?
No, they don't. Again, misconception huge. Everyone thinks they grow tax-free. You're not paying tax on the growth while it's in there. But if you put you have 100,000 in your RRSPs and it grows to 200,000, that $100,000 of growth, again, is a tax deferral. That's a tax deferral because when you go to take out that $200,000 down the road, you're going to pay tax on that. So it appears to grow tax-free. There's not tax taken off it when it grows, but you go to access that money. If you had 100,000 growth, you're not going to have $100,000 in your pocket. So I would say the answer to that is no. And then the next one, Christina, I like this one because people talk about saving for retirement and, everyone has the number, right? Which we're not big fans of, but, $500,000, $1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever your number is, but they don't differentiate. So my question to you is, would you rather have $1 million in your RRSP or $700,000 in your bank account or your cash value life insurance or some other non-government thing?
So most people are going to lean towards that million, right? It sounds pretty good. Not me. I'm not going to take that $1 million in the RSP because I know that if I want to get that money out of there and use it for anything else, I'm going to have to pay the tax on it, right? So at 700,000 in a tax bracket, you're going to have more. Like if you're in a 50% tax bracket, you're down to 500,000 in that RSP when you go to pull that money out. So the 700,000 is going to be obviously much better once we do those tax calculations. As well, I've got control of that 700,000 to go pick what I want to invest in, which is going to be in things that I would hope would make better returns. But do the math very easily. Once you do the tax, even in a lower tax bracket, you're going to have more money with the 700,000 sitting in your bank account than you are with the $1 million sitting in the RRSP. So the next question, and it's the whole philosophy behind the RRSP, is that you put the money in a high tax bracket, you take the money out in a low tax bracket. So Darren, are you going to be in a lower tax bracket on the day that you retire?
This is a dirty little secret of RRSP. Can you imagine a financial advisor coming to talk to someone in their 20s, 30s, or 40s and saying, hey, if you invest all your money with me for the next 20, 30, 40 years, I'll tell you what kind of incredible advisor I am. I am going to make you poorer in retirement than you are today. Because that's really what you're saying is you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire. How many people want to be poorer in retirement? So the reality is people aren't in lower tax brackets when they retire. Or a lot of people are not in lower tax brackets. Business owners, real estate investors. It's like you're in your 20s and 30s. Hopefully you're in the lowest tax bracket you're ever going to be. And then when you're 60s and 70s, if you do it properly and you have the right advice, you're going to be much wealthier and you're going to be in a higher tax bracket. So the idea that you're going to want to be in a lower tax bracket at retirement, doing it with RRSPs to me is just it's wrong for the majority of people. Now there are people that are going to come in the lower tax bracket. I'm not saying it never works, right? Absolutely. If this is all your savings, again, we're not crapping on everyone doing RRSPs, but for that business owner, real estate investor, or the individual that believes they're going to be wealthy or want to be wealthy or are wealthy, those people aren't going to be in a lower tax bracket. We've got all kinds of clients, Christina. It's almost like clockwork. We can do it when they turn 71 and they have to riff their RRSPs and they call up and go, do I really have to take an income from that? Because do you know how much tax I'm going to pay taking that money out? Because they're in the highest tax bracket of their life in retirement.
Exactly. If you can get the strategy to work. It might work. It could work out, right? Which is why we're not crapping on everything. It can work in certain techniques. But I've seen it where, banks are recommending students to put money in RRSPs, and my mind is blown. Like they don't have an income. I don't understand. Like why would you recommend that to somebody, a younger individual that's just trying to set up a savings account, right? Like you have to, do the math and think it through before using that strategy, right?
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that math. So let's just pretend here a 30% tax bracket. Okay. So someone's in a 30% tax bracket, and when you put money in an RSP, again, not tax deduction, tax deferred, but you see that on your income tax. So it doesn't matter what you're making. They would, if you put $20,000 into an RSP, they would look at your last $20,000 of income. You wouldn't pay tax on that income today. It would be deferred. And let's say you put that 20,000 in an RSP, invested at 5% for 25 years, you'd have about 67,727. So 67,727. If you said, no, I'm going to pay the tax on that today. So instead of 20,000 to invest, you only have 14,000, you paid 30% tax, and that grows at 5%. Well, then you're going to have 47,409. So again, it goes back to what we talked earlier. People look at that and go, well, 67,000 is more than 47,000. The RRSP wins. But if that $47,000 is in a TFSA or cash value life insurance or some other tax-free product, when you go to take the money out of those products, you're going to have $47,000. And when you go to take your $67,000 out of your RRSP, well, if you're still in a 30% tax bracket, you're going to have $47,000. So you're no better off if you're in the same tax bracket in RRSP when you put the money in and you take the money out, assuming you can have tax-free growth in the alternative investment. So you're no better off. But let's go back to what happens if instead of a 30% tax bracket, you're in a 50% tax bracket? Or what if you're in a 60% tax bracket, or God knows what taxes will be in the next 20 or 30 years? So you defer a 30% tax to take it out in a 50, 60, 70% tax bracket. You're going to have significantly less money than if you had paid the tax in the year you made the RRSP contribution and invested in something tax-free like a TFSA or cash value life insurance. Huge.
Well, yeah, and on that note too, and when you say who knows what tax rates will be, that's control, right? Like you've given up the control at this point, because you really, your hands are tied. It's whatever they decide on the day that you go to pull that money out, whatever the government has decided are the tax rates for that year, that is what you are paying. So you have no say in that. There's absolutely no say. But when you make you decide this year, you decide with the facts and what you know now, you're in control of that, which I think is kind of, that's really important as well.
Yeah, at least it's a known, right? Like I used to get a call every year from my accountant until I finally educated him, and it was like, "Are you going to put money in RRSPs to get a tax deduction?" And I'm like, "I don't get a tax deduction. I get a tax deferral." Oh yeah, but it's and for me, I'd rather pay the tax now. As high as taxes are in Canada, in my mind, there's no doubt they're going to be higher. So I'd rather pay the tax now and then put it in a tax-free environment like a cash value life insurance. All right, Christina. Then we're going to talk about what can you do with your money anyway. We kind of step back. How many things can you use money for?
So there's really two things that you can do with your money. That's it. Just two that we can decide. So we can either spend our money or we can give our money away, either on death or while we're living. But that is absolutely the only two things that we can do, right? We can spend it or we can give it away.
Okay. So at the end of the day, once we invest it and we grow and all that, we spend it, we give it away. But I like that. Let's come back to that. Let's talk about this retirement mountain. And, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast before, but we talked to clients about this retirement mountain. So picture retirement mountain, you get it up, go up the mountain, and you go down the mountain. Well, when you're going up the mountain, that's what we call your accumulation phase, right? That's where you're saving, your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. And you're trying to hit that top, right? You're trying to get to that top of that mountain, and then you come down the mountain when you spend your money. So if we stick to the accumulation phase or going up the mountain, let's look at an RRSP. What happens in the accumulation phase? you give up control. You put your money into an RSP in your 20s or 30s, and all of a sudden, an amazing opportunity comes along. You're giving up control, not be able to take advantage of that. What else? Well, you have the volatility of the market, right? If you were invested in 2008, you crashed with everybody else. And when COVID hit and the market crashed, you crashed with everyone else. Typically, you're going to pay big fees in an RRSP because people aren't as fee conscious in an RRSP. We talked about deferring tax and deferring the tax calculation. We don't know. We're going to defer the tax, and then we don't know how much tax we're going to pay it out. So that's, again, accumulation phase for an RRSP. And then back to that, opportunities and emergencies. For me, that's the biggest one. If you're a business owner, a real estate investor, or a high net worth individual, you don't think there's going to be opportunities come your way? Well, that's how you're going to become wealthy or wealthier, is taking advantage of those opportunities. So, that's to me in the accumulation phase, and RRSP is not a great strategy. What's your comments on the accumulation phase, Christina?
So I think what happens is people tend to use the RRSPs in the accumulation phase because they're easy. It's an easy fix for your accountant to say, put the money into an RRSP, we won't pay the tax this year. It's an easy fix for your investment advisor to say, okay, we're going to put in an RRSP, we're not going to have to deal with the tax consequences this year. We're not going to have to deal with tax slips next year on that growth. We're not going to have to deal with the estate planning because you're not going to die, you're young, right? Like, it's a very easy planning technique that people fall into because I really do think it's easy. It's the accumulation phase. You're not thinking about it. You're throwing that money in there. You don't get a tax slip. You don't get, you don't see what's coming. And when we talk to people that are frustrated with the RRSPs, is in the decumulation, like when we're spending, that's when it becomes a problem. But it's super easy to forget about the issue and sweep it under the rug while we're accumulating. And I 100% think that's what's happening. It's an easy fix for people. And they say, yep, this is what we're going to do each year. We're going to fix the problem by putting the money in here. But then you hit a spot and you're like, okay, now we got to sit down. We got to talk about this. We've saved it. Now, how are we going to spend it? And that's when the issues come to light, that we didn't do that original planning in the first place. And we didn't talk about, how are we going to spend from an RRSP, right?
Yeah, and I mean the spending's an issue, and then like on the accumulation phase, we talk about, if you want to be wealthy, invest in you, a business, real estate. Well, how does that help you in the accumulation stage? And what happens if you're climbing that mountain in the accumulation phase and something happens, like you become disabled? Is your RRSP going to continue to be funded if you're disabled? No. What happens if you die? Is your family going to be able to get to the top of that retirement mountain and have enough money? No. We're going to solve that with the cash value life insurance. But again, a lot of holes in the RRSP. Not evil, just a lot of holes. But let's talk about spending that money. So you get to the top of the mountain and you go, great, I got $1 million of RRSPs. And you go, well, how much can I spend? Well, no one asks that question when they're climbing the mountain. They get to the top of the mountain and then they go, now how much can I spend? Everyone that comes into our office in their 60s and 70s has one question: how much can I spend without running out of money? People in their 20s, 30s, and 40s say, I want to save $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Well, you got to be thinking about how efficient is the product you're investing in retirement as far as an income. And an RSP is not efficient. Really, the two ways people typically spend their money in retirement is they use this Monte Carlo method, or the 4% rule. If you want to Google the 4% rule, and it says, great, if I take a balance of stocks and bonds and stuff, you could probably take out 4% of your portfolio and have it last the rest of your lifetime. So $40,000 on $1 million. Or people live off the interest because they're worried, okay, well, if I die, what about my spouse and my family? They need money. So if I have $1 million, I'm just going to live off the interest. Well, a little higher today, but long term, you're probably still looking at 3 or 4% on that. And then don't even get me going on inflation. Like, if you're making $100,000 today and your income is going to go up 5%, or inflation is going to be 4 or 5%, well, in 20 years, you'd need 180,000 to replace the 100,000. So if you're going to produce $180,000 of income from an RSP that's only going to allow you to take an income of 4% or so, you're going to need like $5 million in your RSP to pump out an income of 180 grand and not run out of money for the rest of your life. So I don't know anyone that's going to have that much money in their RRSPs. And I know a lot of people that are looking to replace incomes in the six figures in retirement. So it it's there's a lot of challenges there when you go to spend it. And then what if you give it away, Christina? How does it work if you give away an RRSP?
Yes, that's a great question. So if you're giving away while you're living, while you're paying the full tax on it, right? If you want to take money at that RSP at any point in time, they're taking their taxes back and then you're giving it away at that point. So you can't just say, I'm going to give this to my child and you're going to hand it over and not pay the tax on it. It's not going to happen. You're going to pay full tax on that money when you withdraw it from the RSP. But what a lot of people, another misconception is a lot of people think, yeah, but when I die, that's not going to happen, right? I'm not going to pay the tax when I die, but absolutely, they're going to get their taxes at some point in time. Now, roll over to your spouse. You're fine that you're not going to see the taxes there. You can roll it over to your spouse, no issues. But it's that estate that's going to get hit, right? So on the last spouse's death, you are going. The CRA is going to essentially become the biggest beneficiary in that RRSP. So, people will say, well, I got $1 million in an RRSP. I've earmarked that for my kids. I got 2 kids. They're going to get $500,000 each. Incorrect. On the day you die, that RRSP is deemed disposed of and your estate is paying tax on the entire amount. The day you die, it's the largest tax bill that you're going to ever have if you've got your money. You got $1 million in your RRSP. That's the biggest tax bill it's probably ever going to see. And it's going to pay that full amount of tax that day. And if you're in a 50% tax bracket, well, your kids who you thought were getting 500 and 500 each are now getting 250 and 250. CRA is getting 500,000. That is not an ideal give it away situation. At no point in time do I want CRA to be my biggest beneficiary.
Yeah, and I mean, you're forced to be in a 50% tax bracket because on your terminal tax
Oh, yeah.
return, if you made 100 grand your last year and you had $1 million in your RSP, your income that year is going to be 1.1 million. And if you make 1.1 million, you're going to pay 50, 53, 54% tax on that, depending upon the province. Like, it just shocks me that people don't know that CRA is the biggest benefit, going to be the biggest beneficiary of your RRSP or RIF. Assuming you die without spending all of it. But then I want to tell my RSP story because I always enjoy this. So picture you're sitting in the office and this slick looking guy comes in your office and says, "Hey, I want to be your business partner." And you're like, "Okay, like I don't think so." No, hear me out. And the guy goes, "Listen, here's the way it's going to work. We're going to go into business together. You need to put up all the money. Okay. You need to take all the risk. You need to pay all the fees. You have no control whatsoever. And I'll tell you what, down the road, another 20, 30, 40 years, I'll let you know how much of the business is yours and how much of the business is mine." Who would go into business with a guy like that? You put up all the money, you take all the risk, you pay all the fees, you have no control. Well, those are the rules for an RSP. You put up all the money, take all the risk, pay all the fees, and then down the road, the government's going to say, depending upon what we set the tax rates at 20 and 30 and 40 years, when you take that out, that's how much you get versus how much the partner, the government, gets. So if you had a business offer like that, would you do it? And most people won't, but yet we blindly follow the media and the banks saying RRSPs, RRSPs, RRSPs.
Yeah. And you said, you brought up that, yeah, they can be for some people. There's certain strategies where maybe it might work. In my mind, there's absolutely no time where an RRSP is going to be right for a business owner. Sorry, it has to be said. It is not the best. It's not the best product for you. It doesn't make any sense. You've made your money. You've made your returns investing in your business. You're taking that money outside of your business. You're paying personal tax on it to get it out of your corporation. So instead of, in our corporation, you get that small business tax deduction on the first 500,000. So you get 88 dollars inside your corporation. If you want to take those 88 dollars out to be able to go and invest in an RRSP, you're going to pay the full tax on it. You're going to pay a salary or dividend. Either way, you're going to be left with, 50, 55 dollars. And you're going to turn around, you're going to put that into an RRSP. Like, math is pretty easy here. Is 88 cents more than 50 cents? The answer is yes. So if you can invest with 88 versus 50, absolutely, that makes more sense. That's a tax efficiency thing. But the control thing for me, like if you take that money out of your business and you put it into an RRSP, and the next year you have the most amazing business opportunity to come out, you're not going to go to that RRSP and say, well, okay, now I'm paying all that tax to get it back out, to go do that, get it back. It just doesn't make sense. You want to be investing in your business. You want to be saving in your business. You want to be using those, tax efficient corporate dollars for your retirement savings. And your business is your biggest investment, right? You're your biggest investment. We can save inside of the business and we can do it very tax efficiently. High cash value life insurance is one of the tools that we use. Why would we do anything differently, right? Why would we take it out? For me, it doesn't make sense. When we lay it all down, we do the math, we run the numbers, and we look at that control, huge, right? Like it's not the right solution for a business owner, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's, you and I are prime examples. We're business owners that no longer put money into RSPs once we figured out what really was going on. And I will never put another nickel in RSPs because as a business owner, it just doesn't make sense for me. There's too many opportunities and emergencies. What if you need to make payroll next quarter? You want to make sure you have access to that money and not have to cash out an RSP. So, Christina, you wanted to go back to the characteristics of an ideal investment. If you haven't listened to the podcast on that, check it out. And we kind of run through a list of, if we could build a perfect investment, these are the characteristics you'd be looking for. So we want to kind of go through that list now and see how many of those boxes does an RRSP check. So why don't you start us off, Christina? What do you want to start with?
All right, so I think I just nailed this one down, but the control side. Control. No, we don't have any control, right? When we put our money into RSPs, we're investing in the stock market. We have absolutely no control unless, you're the owner of Facebook, you have no control over that stock whatsoever. So we have no control. We don't have liquidity. We can't easily access that cash if we need it. So that's going to be a big X on that checklist. Safe or low risk? Well, I guess you can invest in guaranteed investment GICs and stuff. You're running the risk of inflation at that point, though, right? It's usually not low risk. We can't, I guess you could say that you could pick some lower risk investments, but the majority of the time you're going to, in order to get those returns, to make it all worth it, you're going to be investing in riskier investments. So I would give that one a usually not or a no for that checkbox.
Cool. Okay, so let's dig into the tax ones next. I love talking about tax. Tax deductible. We already said it's not. I mean, you're going to have lower tax in the year you put it in, but it is a tax deferral. Tax-free growth. Yes and no. I mean, yes, you're not going to pay tax when it's growing, but all that growth is going to be taxable at some day, so not really tax-free growth either. Is it tax-free when you go to spend it? No, any money you take out of that RRSP is going to be fully taxable at your current tax rate. And is it tax-free at death? Well, the answer is absolutely no. It is brutally taxed at death. And we just went through that example that CRA is going to be your largest beneficiary. So we're not doing so good so far with the RRSP checking all these boxes of the ideal investment. What do we got next?
So what about fees? Do we have no fees inside of these? No, we definitely have fees. There's going to be a fee to be able to invest in anything that you're doing in here. So you're going to pay a fee, and sometimes a very, very high fee, depending on what you're investing in. So no on that one. Guaranteed to go up. So I guess it does come down to what you're choosing for your investments. You can pick a GIC or something that's got a guaranteed interest rate in there, but you got to be careful of inflation on that with the guaranteed to go up as well. But I give that a dependent answer, I guess, depending on what you're going to be investing in inside of that RRSP. That could be a yes or a no. Competitive rate of return. That really does come down to what you're investing in and that volatility. We don't know what your return's going to be. It really depends on what you're picking as your investments in your RRSP, and you're going to experience the volatility if you put it in your market. In the market, will it be competitive? I don't know. It's very unknown what's going to happen in the stock market. If you're investing in something that's guaranteed, probably not very competitive. Is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so it could be, right, and it could. There's a lot of it could be, right. right? So it's not, again, we're not saying, no, it's not going to be a competitive return. It could be a competitive return. You could be in a lower fee one if you do it right, but you're not going to be in a no fee, and you're not going to be in a guaranteed to go up and all those other ones. Yeah.
Keep in mind, though, when you're doing your returns on these, is that you have to incorporate the tax that you're going to pay too, right? So this is a before tax or an after tax rate of return. So you got to be pretty darn competitive to keep it at a nice return after tax.
Yeah. And is it a great protection or legacy tool? And the answer is absolutely not. If you become disabled, the RRSP contributions stop. That's the end of it. There's no self-completing that's all wrapped up in a nice bow. There's no legacy in the form of a nice tax-free death benefit or some other tax-free from a TFSA. So it doesn't check those boxes. And the next one, Christina, why don't you take the more than one job? You love that one.
So when you invest in the stock market, your dollar's really doing one job, right? The job is to go up in value. So typically, that's the one job that it's doing. Now, you can use margin accounts to some degree where you can do a little bit of leveraging, but it's going to be limited and dependent on what you're invested in. Sometimes that can be very low. So again, there's no yes or no answers on some of these. It really depends on what you're investing in. If you're able to do a margin account and leverage it and use it in another job. So dependent, but typically it's doing that one job. It's trying to go up in value with the stock market.
Yeah, I just say, like, for the vast majority of people, it's definitely not leverageable, because we don't when we talk to people, they're not leveraging their RRSPs, and it's typically not a low fee, and it's typically not this. I mean, we're going to talk in generalities, and a lot in general, most of these are no. Yeah, you can come back and beat us up and say, oh, but this one could do this and could do that and could do that. Okay, but is 90% of the population doing that? And the answer is no.
All right, so that goes right into the and asset. Is this an and asset? No, the RRSP is an or asset. It is an or, just like a lot of other investments. It is an or. You put money in the RRSP in the stock market or Bitcoin or real estate. It's an or. That's just what they are. It isn't. We can't have it working in more than one place at one time. The next one, the short term and the long term. So I would, RRSPs are. It's funny because I think people use them more for the accumulation phase, which you would think short term, but they don't have access to it. So they're set up for the long term, but sometimes they're not structured properly for the long term is what happens. So they are sold and they are promoted as long-term savings is what they would be. So it's not short and long term.
Yeah. And then the next one that's important to me is the government not in control of it. 100% the government controls this, right? The government controls how much contributions you're going to go in. They change the RRSP contribution each year. The government controls how much you get out at the end of the day, because that's really what the current tax rate is at the day you retire or the day you start taking an income. The government knows how much you have in there. The government knows everything about your RRSPs. They track it, they monitor it, and they can change it at any time. So complete government control. So we don't have freedom from government control on that one at all. All right. Any others we miss?
Nope, that's our checklist. So I'm happy we got the RRSP done, and I'm excited to do more though. I like taking this list and comparing it and seeing what the investments line up with.
Yeah. So again, if you're out there and you're listening and you're doing RRSPs, we're not saying it's an evil, rotten thing to do. It's great for some people. It's a lot of T4 employees that don't have a pension. Maybe you put money in a higher tax bracket, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. But if you're a higher income earner and you plan to be a higher income earner for a while and you plan to accumulate wealth in retirement, or you're a business owner for sure, or you're a real estate investor, we just don't think at Control and Compound it's a great spot to be saving and storing your wealth. We think there's better alternatives, and we hope this episode taught you a little bit more about that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Hey, it's Darren Mitchell. I am super excited to be presenting at the Real Estate Investors Summit in Calgary, February 15th to 18th. Amazing line of speakers. We've got Michelle Romano from Dragon's Den. We've got Investor Mel and Dave. We got Ken Dunn, ultimate fundraiser guy. Simon, the Condo King. We're going to show you how to get started on your real estate journey, or experienced people. We're going to show you vetted deals, and we're going to show you how to invest passively. Buy your tickets for the Real Estate Investor Summit now.